Hey everyone, welcome back. Or if you're just joining us, welcome to KSSP Podcast. I'm Spencer.
And I'm Katie.
And in this part of our agriculture farming series, we're going to be just kind of going over organic farming, and we'll also talk about GMOs too. So we're going to start with organic. What is organic farming? Organic farming is a way of growing crops and raising animals that can be good for the environment. Instead of using harmful chemicals, farmers use things like compost, animal manure, and bone meal to help their plants grow. They also use methods like rotating crops and planting different crops together to keep the soil healthy. Organic farming started because people didn't like how farming was changing and wanted to do it in a better way. Rules for organic farming say that farmers can only use natural things and can't use synthetic chemicals that are bad for the environment.
So how long has organic farming been around? Organic farming has been happening in the U.S. since the 1940s. It started with small gardens, but now there are big organic farms with extra food that they sell with a special label. So companies now make organic food, and many stores only sell organic products. Because there are so many organic products, people wanted to make sure they are really organic, so a system was made to check and make sure.
And how is organic farming done? Well, organic farming uses special methods to grow crops and raise animals. Methods include crop rotation, using compost and green plants to help the soil, and using bugs to control other bugs. Farmers also use natural materials to control disease and weeds. They do not use genetically modified plants or animals. By using these methods, organic farmers help the environment and make their crops and animals healthy. Organic farmers use different things to help their plants grow. They use animal poop, special types of fertilizer made from seeds or minerals, and things like rock phosphate or green sand, which are natural forms of important plant nutrients. Sometimes the soil's acidity levels need to be adjusted to help plants grow better. This can be done using things like lime or sulfur. In some countries, farmers can use other safe and natural compounds like iron or aluminum to adjust the soil's acidity.
So, let's talk about crop rotation. Plants need different nutrients to grow well. One of the biggest challenges for organic farmers is making sure plants get enough nitrogen at the right time. This can be done by using methods like crop rotation and planting special cover crops like legumes, which can pull nitrogen from the air and turn it into a form that plants can use.
We'll go over intercropping. So intercropping is a way farmers can use different plants to control pests and diseases, and it can also add nutrients to the soil. But it can be difficult because the plants might compete for space and nutrients. To help with this, farmers might space the plants further apart. Another way to add nutrients to the soil is to turn leftover plant parts back into the soil. Different plants leave behind different amounts of nitrogen, which can help plants get the right amount of nutrients at the right time.
There's also polyculture. So organic farming grows different kinds of crops together. This is called polyculture, and it helps the environment. Growing many different crops helps good bugs and tiny organisms that live in the soil. This makes the whole farm healthier and helps keep plants from disappearing forever.
There's composting and green plants. Organic farming, again, uses natural ways to make the soil fertile again. This is done by using things like compost and green plants. Tiny organisms like mushrooms and worms help break down the plants and release food for other plants. Farmers use different methods to make the soil better, like rotating crops, planting cover crops, and using compost. This helps keep the soil healthy and stops it from washing away. It also helps stop climate change by holding on to carbon.
And then there's pesticides. While conventional agriculture uses synthetic pesticides and water-soluble synthetically purified fertilizers, organic farmers are restricted by regulations to using natural pesticides and fertilizers. For instance, naturally occurring pesticides such as pyrethrin are permitted, while synthetic fertilizers and pesticides are generally prohibited. Synthetic substances that are allowed include, for example, copper sulfate, elemental sulfur, and ivermectin. Genetically modified organisms, nanomaterials, human sewage sludge, Plant growth regulators, hormones, and antibiotic use in livestock husbandry are prohibited.
And we may be wondering, is organic farming regulated? And it is. They are international, so organic agricultural methods are internationally regulated and legally enforced by many nations, based in large part on the standards set by the International Federation of Organic Agriculture Movements, IFOAM, an international umbrella organization for organic farming organizations established in 1972.
So now we'll look into what people are saying for and against the organic farming method. So we'll go over some pros and cons here. So the pros include, okay. So organic farming is basically when farmers take care of the earth and all the creatures that live on it. They don't use harmful chemicals and instead make homes for animals. This way of farming can be easier, save money, and make the soil, water, and air cleaner. Plus, it helps with flowers being pollinated. People who like organic farming believe it's good for the earth, helps farmers be in charge of their own farms, and makes the food we eat healthier and safer. There's a lot of organic farming all around the world, especially in Australia. People are still trying to make it even better. People who support organic farming think it's good for the earth because it keeps the soil healthy and uses less energy. They also think it helps stop climate change by keeping carbon in the soil. But they also know that it takes up more land to grow the same amount of food as regular farming. If too many people in rich countries use organic farming, it can mean cutting down more forests, which could be bad for the earth. A research group called the Hudson Institute found out that it takes 3 times more land to make organic beef than regular beef, but there are ways that organic farming can help fix land that was once a desert or not good for farming. This can be done by growing food for both animals and people on the same land, which saves space. People who like organic farming say that the soil is better quality and can hold more water, which makes it easier for crops to grow in dry times. A study showed that over time, organic farming makes the soil even better, but another study found that regular farming is better for growing crops on soil that doesn't have enough good stuff in it, especially in cold places. This is because organic farming often needs things from outside the farm, which is not good for the long term.
Then we'll just go over a couple of cons. So organic farming can help the animals and nature around the farm, but since it doesn't make as much food as regular farming, more land, as we mentioned, has to be used for farming somewhere else. This means that natural places like forests have to be turned into farmland. This can cause harm to animals and nature and make the climate worse, even though it helps the environment close to the farm. A study in the UK found it's difficult to say which type of farming is best for the environment. The study showed that organic farming can sometimes cause problems like making the air and water dirty, even though it uses less energy. But the study also found that some types of farming cause fewer problems, like using less chemicals. The study also found that organic farming needs more land to grow the same amount of food. This was especially true for foods like wheat and potatoes, which need even more land when grown without chemicals. Farms that use organic methods usually make less food than farms that use regular methods. The difference can be up to 85% less food. Organic food also costs more, about 2.5 times more than regular food. This is good for the farmers because they earn more money, but it means that people who buy the food have to pay more too. Scientists at Oxford University studied 71 reports about organic farming. They found that some organic food can actually harm the environment more than regular food. For example, they found that organic milk, cereal, and pork made more pollution. But they also found that organic beef and olives made less pollution in most cases. Organic farming needed more land, but used less energy. It also caused problems like making the air and water dirty, damaging the soil, and hurting the water. The scientists think we should talk about the best ways to farm instead of just arguing about organic versus regular farming. They want to find the best solutions for different situations. And then a study from 2012 found that organic farming can sometimes hurt the environment. This is because organic farming often makes more pollution in the air and water, which can harm plants and animals living there. Organic farming also needs more land to produce the same amount of food as regular farming, which can lead to even more pollution. This extra pollution can cause problems like too much algae growing in lakes and rivers and too much nitrogen in the water, which can harm the plants and animals that live there.
So you might be asking yourself, is organic food better for me? It can be hard to compare organic and non-organic food because there can be differences in how it's grown and handled. There is not enough proof to say that organic food is safer or healthier than non-organic food, and there's no evidence to show that organic food tastes better. Organic foods are grown without using synthetic pesticides, fertilizers, hormones, or antibiotics. But a study found that they are not healthier than regular foods. They have the same amount of vitamins, minerals, and carbohydrates, so you won't get more nutrition by eating organic foods. According to information from the USDA, food grown organically has fewer chemicals called pesticides than food grown in a regular way. But even the regular food still has a safe amount of pesticides. We are not sure yet if the pesticides used on organic foods are safer than the ones used on regular food. And this is because there are many things in the environment that can affect our health, and it's hard to know for sure if the pesticides are the main cause of health problems. So scientists don't have enough information to say if organic animal products like meat and dairy are better for you because they don't have hormones and antibiotics. More research needs to be done to know for sure.
And then we'll kind of go over a little bit of GMOs. So what about GMOs, or genetically modified organisms? So we'll kind of go over what they are. A GMO is a plant, animal, or microorganism that has had its genes changed using special techniques. This means that new genes can be added or existing genes can be changed, removed, or improved. GMOs can be made by transferring genes from one species to another, even from different groups of plants or animals. The first type of genetically modified crops were made to be eaten by people or animals and to be safe from bugs and diseases. The second type was made to have better vitamins and minerals. The third type could be used for things like making medicine, fuel, or cleaning up pollution. Farmers are always trying to find ways to grow more food, make working on the farm easier, and help the environment. Using genetically modified crops is one way to do this. Genetically modified crops can help by fighting pests and diseases, growing better in different weather conditions, and being healthier for people and animals to eat. Right now, most genetically modified crops are things like soybeans, cotton, corn, and canola. These crops are mainly grown in countries like the United States, Brazil, and India, but not all countries grow genetically modified crops, and some farmers in Europe and Africa have not started using them yet. Studies have shown that genetically modified crops can be helpful for farmers. They can increase the amount of food grown and reduce the need for harmful pesticides. This can lead to more money for the farmers and better food for everyone. Most genetically modified crops are made to be resistant to certain weed-killing chemicals. These genetically modified crops are more common than crops that are grown in a traditional way and can resist weed killers. For example, in the United States, 93% of soybeans and most of the genetically modified corn are resistant to a weed killer called glyphosate. Most genetically modified crops are also made to protect against insects. This is done by adding genes from a type of bacteria called Bacillus thuringiensis. Only a small number of genetically modified crops have other traits, such as being resistant to viruses or changing the way the plant grows and matures. Golden rice is a type of genetically modified crop that has been made to help improve the nutrients in rice. Scientists added special genes to make the rice produce beta-carotene, which is a part of the vitamin A. This is important because there are some places where people don't get enough vitamin A, which can lead to blindness and even death, especially in children. The first version of golden rice didn't have a lot of beta-carotene, but later versions were improved and had 23 times more. In 2018, golden rice was approved for people to eat. Scientists have also found a way to use plants and plant cells to make medicines. They do this by changing the plant's genes to produce certain medicines inside the plant. Some of the plants they use are duckweed, algae, and moss. The medicines can be used to treat different health problems like Gaucher's disease and can be found in the plant seeds. Scientists like using plants because they can make more complex medicines and there is less risk of contamination compared to using bacteria. Some plants used include transgenic carrots and tobacco cells. Vaccines are important to keep us healthy, but they can be expensive to make and store. Some scientists are working on a way to make vaccines using plants, which would make them easier to get to people who live in poor or developing countries. These vaccines can be stored in the plant, so they don't need to be kept in a special place or expensive fridge. They also last a long time and protect us when we eat them. The only problem is that making vaccines using plants is very expensive. So, for now, most plant vaccines are being used for animals instead of people. And genetically modified crops can help reduce the amount of CO2 released by farming. This is because they can make farming more efficient, leading to higher crop yields, less use of harmful chemicals, less need for tractors, and less soil disturbance. A study from 2021 found that if farmers in the European Union started using genetically modified crops more, it will reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 33 million tons of CO2. That's 7.5% of all the CO2 released from farming.
So are GMOs regulated? Short answer is yes, they are. So the government controls and makes rules about genetically modified organisms, GMOs, like crops and food. This started in 1975 at a meeting in California. They made suggestions on how to use GMOs safely. There's also a treaty called the Cartagena Protocol that helps govern and control the use of GMOs between countries. 157 countries follow this treaty and use it as a guide to make their own rules. Universities and research places have a group of people who make sure any experiments with genetically modified organisms are safe and approved. The people doing the experiment need to be trained, and the place they are doing the experiment needs to be approved by a government agency. There are rules and guidelines in place to make sure working with GMOs is safe for people and the community. These rules are based on how dangerous the GMOs are and how easily they can make people sick. There are different levels of safety, from level 1, where there is no risk of getting sick, to level 4, where the GMOs can be very dangerous. Different countries might have different rules and names for these levels. So different countries have different rules about genetically modified organisms. Some countries allow GMOs and have rules about how they can be used, while others do not allow them at all. In some countries, the rules are different depending on what GMO will be used for, such as food or something else. There are 38 countries that do not allow the growing of GMOs, but they do allow research using them. However, sometimes people break the rules and grow GMOs illegally. In Europe, the rules for using genetically modified organisms are different from the United States. In Europe, there are separate rules for growing GMOs and using them in food. Only a few GMOs are allowed to be grown in Europe, but many can be used in food. People in Europe have different opinions on GMOs, and the rules can change depending on the country. In the United States, the rules focus more on the science behind the GMOs and don't see them as a big problem. They also don't regulate things made using gene editing in the same way they do GMOs. But in Europe, anything made using gene editing is considered a GMO. So the question of whether foods made from genetically modified plants should be labeled is a big one for regulators. Some people believe that it's important for people to know if their food was made from genetically modified plants, so they can make informed decisions about what they eat. This is why 64 countries require labeling of these foods. In Europe, all food or feed that has more than 0.9% of genetically modified ingredients must be labeled. In the United States and Canada, labeling is optional. There are some who say that labeling is not necessary because there is no evidence that the foods are harmful. The American Medical Association and the American Association for the Advancement of Science believes that labeling is not necessary and may even be misleading. Despite this, there has been a 30% increase in sales of products labeled as not containing genetically modified ingredients, reaching $1.1 billion in 2014.
And then we'll just kind of go over what are kind of the different stances, I guess, that people have on GMOs. So obviously people have different opinions about GMOs, especially about using them outside of the lab. This has caused debates between different groups like customers, companies, governments, and scientists. Some people are worried about the safety of food made from GMOs and what it could do to the environment. This has caused fights and laws that limit the use of GMOs in some countries. People are mainly worried about how GMOs could affect their health and the environment. They're afraid that GMOs might cause allergic reactions or that harmful genes could mix into the food we eat. There is a general agreement among scientists that food made from genetically modified crops is safe to eat and no different from normal food. But some people, including the public, might not think that genetically modified food is safe. Different countries have different rules about genetically modified food, with some countries not allowing it and others allowing it, but with different levels of rules and regulations. People used to think that genetically modified plants wouldn't mix with wild plants and that it wouldn't cause any harm. But now we know that sometimes this can happen and it can make weeds harder to kill. In some places, people found that genes from genetically modified crops got into other crops. Scientists are now making GMOs that won't spread so easily. For example, they make genetically modified salmon that can't have babies and genetically modified bacteria that can only live in certain conditions. They are also trying to make genetically modified plants that won't be able to have babies. People are worried about how GMOs might affect the environment and farming. They are concerned that they could reduce the number of different species, cause new problems with pests and make pests become resistant to the treatments used against them. Studies in China and the United States have shown that when people use GMOs correctly, it actually increases the number of insects and doesn't cause new pest problems. And when people follow the right steps, pests don't become resistant to treatments. There was a concern that GMOs might harm monarch butterflies, but more research has shown that the levels found in the environment aren't high enough to cause harm. And there are some people who believe that using technology to change genes is like playing God. They have moral and ethical concerns about this technology, especially now that it's possible to change human genes. People are worried about what limits there should be on this technology and if it is right to use it at all. Some people also have concerns about how far this technology can go, especially in terms of making changes that can be passed down from one generation to another. There are also worries about things like making sure food that is not genetically modified is not contaminated and making sure companies that make and sell GMOs are not too powerful. Some people are also worried about the patents on life and use of property rights. People have different opinions, as we've discussed, about GMOs. Some people in Europe don't like them, but people in North America are more okay with them. This might be because there have been problems with food safety in Europe in the past, so people don't trust the food as much. Some groups, like the Organic Consumers Association and Greenpeace, think that GMOs might not be safe and want to label them or stop using them until we know more.
Yeah, I think the whole freaking out about GMO things personally is just, and this is just my opinion, but I get also based on what the scientists say, but I just think it's kind of ridiculous and blown out of proportion. Like, there are circumstances where it can be dangerous, but like, as long as it's regulated properly, GMO shouldn't be outright banned.
No.
The insulin I take is a GMO, and like, if you look at how bananas used to look like 100, 200 years ago and compare them now, like after they've been genetically modified, it's completely different. Like there's all kinds of fruits you can look into, like how they've been genetically modified over the centuries and what they used to be like and what they're like now. Like, it's not a dangerous thing. We've already been consuming GMOs just from like crossbreeding and things like that, even before we had all this technology. And I think the human gene editing is a different topic. I think that's different.
Yeah.
And I think we did talk about that before, but in another episode. But yeah, that's just my piece on the GMO thing.
Yeah, I think, I agree with that. I don't think GMOs are a bad thing at all. With food, especially, because if it helps us get more food for people and uses less space, which I think that was the biggest thing that I think that was the biggest thing with, I guess the main negative to organic farming was just how much space it uses and how much land you need when we can grow these crops with GMOs with less land.
Yeah.
Now, and especially since organic hasn't been shown to be better nutritionally for you or even taste, there's no nutritional benefits for organic food. It's really just a label that people use as like a scare tactic almost to convince them to buy higher priced food. I don't know. It just seems like a scam in my opinion. Even like after we've gone over all of like organic farming and GMOs. Like I understand that there can be concerns with GMOs and we can address those concerns, and like again, as long as it's regulated, and like I mentioned, I think somewhere it was, as long as people are following the steps properly, not
Mm-hmm.
taking shortcuts, then then it's been shown to be fine, safe, and effective. So then that comes down to human use. So we shouldn't be mad at the GMOs. We should be concerned with the people using them and make sure that they're using them correctly and safely. So it's
Yeah.
not really even the GMOs, it's, I guess, us as humans that we need to make sure we're doing it right and not doing unethical things, I guess, with any of this. But
Yeah.
yeah, but I think it's still like interesting, obviously, to talk about. But
Yeah.
I I do think organic farming can be a little bit of a scam.
I agree with that too, 100%.
But I mean, hey, those farmers who are organic farming, I mean, and some of them might believe it, so I'm not trying to like discredit them, but hey, they found a way to make more money by selling
Yeah.
these organic crops to people, and people are buying it. So hey, more power to them, I guess. If you can convince people that organic food is better, even though there's not much data behind it, and charge them more for that food so that you get more money. I don't know. That's just
Yeah. Yeah.
kudos, I guess, to you
A
for
nice
doing that.
little gift they got going there.
Yeah. But I mean, people are still gonna fall for it. People still fall for it, and
Yeah, because organic just sounds so much better. Like the word just sounds
I mean,
healthier to people
yeah,
for some reason.
it does. And I'm not gonna say it doesn't either. Like
Yeah.
organic sounds like better, but when you look into it, it
Hmm.
isn't any better for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, if there were like, if it had, and especially since like, I don't know, I feel like some people think it's more nutritious, but we actually used GMOs, as we discussed, to increase the amount of vitamin A in some foods and the amount of
Mhm.
nutrients and vitamins in foods so that
Yeah.
we wouldn't have those deficiencies. And now people are wanting to go back to organic food, which may have less vitamins and minerals comparatively, leading to more nutrient deficiencies just in general, which are not good, obviously. It's just interesting. I don't know.
Yeah.
GMOs and organic, that debate, or whatever you want to call it, is an interesting
Yeah.
discussion.
Yeah. So once again, we just want to thank everyone who's been watching, liking, and sharing. We just want you to know that we really appreciate you guys.
And we are excited to have you guys along on this journey with us as we see where KSSP podcast goes. And as always, you can leave a comment below if you have any topic ideas that you want to hear us talk about in future episodes.
You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, and we do occasionally live stream on Twitch, so you can follow us there to see when we do.
And don't forget to give this video a like, as well as follow or subscribe to our other social media accounts and turn on notifications so that you get notified when our new content comes out. Otherwise, we will see you all in the next video.